So we're going to be talking to you guys about phonics instruction, which we all know is Dr. Wood's favorite thing.
Yes.
So just to talk about the article, it actually was a survey. And what they used, and like it says, student response is key when making instructional decisions. So they, in the survey, they were doing a survey on curriculum-based measures, which are most commonly used. That's your time stuff. And so the purpose of this was to determine the difference between the curriculum-based measures and nonsent word fluency. So it focused a lot on nonsent word fluency. And so we use progress monitoring with emerging readers. If you've taken Dr. Moore's emerging reading class. And then there are 4 considerations that are vital when selecting assessment to do with your students. So you have to know which the measure is sensitive to change in the target skill across time. So is your student progressing the way that you want them to progress? The degree to which data are reliable and valid, as we've talked about reliability and validity in here. The availability of multiple alternative forms. So if they're not getting one thing, is there a way that you can assess them in a different way? Because the way that you're using may not work for some students. And the availability of decision-making frameworks to signal the need for instructional changes. So as you're doing this, okay, how am I supposed to change my instruction? How should I do that? So like I said, curriculum, which that's actually supposed to be CBM, not CNB. That's fine. So the way that they do this is whenever you progress monitor, you do it once to twice a week to make sure that they're on the level and at the skill that you want them to be. Nonsent word fluency is assessing alphabetical understanding and phonological decoding. So that's such as students, doing a consonant vowel consonant, such as like moss, which that would be blending. I know she's so happy that I did that correctly.
That sounds right.
And so this is a quote that I found out of the article. It says, educators monitor student progress by periodically collecting performance data and interpreting the trajectory of those data across time to decide whether to continue the current intervention, intensify the intervention, or make a change. And it very much talked about doing tiers, and it focused a lot on tier 2. So as you're changing your instruction to making sure that your students are getting the material that you are teaching. And so the 2 main research questions that were given were, to what degree is the average rate of weekly growth on nonsense word fluency distinct from the average rate of weekly growth on the curriculum-based measure, and the R stands for reading, for students receiving supplement phonics instruction? And to what degree does the reliability in which curriculum-based measurement, reading, and nonsense word fluency capture growth differ? Relatedly, to what degree do curriculum-based measure reading and nonsense word fluency differ in their ability to capture between student differences in growth?
Okay, so in the article it talked about the method that they called them tutors. Essentially, tutors could also be teachers, or really anybody that is giving this type of, I would call it testing. But who participated? They had 3,000 grade 1 students. And so in the article it just said grade 1, so I'm guessing that would be first grade, because most places, I know for sure in the United States, would count kindergarten as kind of like your, kindergarten, and then grade 1 would be first grade, clearly. But listen, my brain was really working on that one. So basically there were 554 different schools across the Midwest, Mountain West, and Southeast United States served in this, and that was what built up the 3,000 students. And then about 50% of the group were female, and then this is just kind of talking about the breakdown of the different ethnicities in the group. It was actually a pretty diverse group that they worked with, and I don't want to say I was surprised at that, but I thought it was a good element to really see different ethnicities in this. So basically each student was assessed, and this was a I would call it a one-on-one. It might have been done, it mentioned that some parts were done in whole group, some parts were literally one-on-one with a tutor. But with that large of number of students, of course, it would probably be groups, but each student would be working individually on this. But each student was assessed with the NWF and CBMR measures once a week. And with the NWF, they were given basically a list of words, and the student was to either, and in the actual assessment, the tutor would call out the word or show them the word, and then from that, most of the time they would show them the word because they didn't want to give any kind of auditory cues, but then the student would either have to mark down mark the sounds and everything of the word, and then they would go throughout the rest of the process with the NWF. And at the end of it, it was basically that the number of marks that they got correct either progressed them on to the next level, or if they didn't, we're going to talk about what happened in a second. They also did the same thing with the CBMR. I'm sorry, acronyms today are like all crazy. But the CBMR, and so the only difference with this was that they did have 1 exact minute, and they had to get through as many as they could because this measures the curriculum and how well they're doing with their reading. So basically, if they got 63 correct sounds per minute, or less than 63 correct sounds, then they were put into an intervention course. And we do have that more and more, even in our schools around here in Pickens County, with reading interventionalist teachers. And I think it's a great program because it takes students that are missing sounds at a very young level and just making sure that they are on grade level and they're up to standard of what they need to be doing. But they would work with the tutor one-on-one for 20 minutes during each school day. And so by doing that, they would basically just be working on these different sounds. Lessons would be differentiated for each student to fit the need that they personally had. And then at the end of it, once a week, they would reassess and see where the student was at. That way they could keep benchmarks on each student. And then this is basically just kind of tying everything up that I just said. But the data was gathered, and the data was then put into different graphs and charts to then present to the rest of the school and to the classroom teachers. That way they could see where their students fell and what the students had, where they had progressed to in this time. And a big concept, this is really not anything from the article, but I think it's just really important. But phonemic awareness in younger and primary grades is vital to reading and comprehension. So you need to know that.
So the results, this is a table from the article, and it's statistics of the progress monitoring outcomes for the students. And I didn't put this on here, but there were some students that didn't turn in their survey. Obviously, with anything, there's going to be students who don't respond. So it's actually a little less than 3,000, but they still kept with the 3,000 placeholder. So this is our nonsense word fluency, and that is our curriculum-based measures. Okay. Anyway, so statistics, we have their observations, how many weeks it was, the intercept, the slope, and the standard error of estimate and the standard error of the slope. And as you can tell, a lot of these numbers are very close to each other, no matter, like, the nonsense word fluency as 8.7, on curriculum based it's 8.15. So a lot of these numbers tend to go close to each other, meaning that they worked almost as well as the other one. So educators may observe different rates of improvement for students receiving the phonics-based reading intervention depending on whether they were using the nonsense word fluency or the curriculum-based measures of reading. But they demonstrated sensitivity to intervention, as like everything is going to demonstrate. And they did produce 2 different estimates of improvement, but since those estimates were so close, there are small questions to whether which practical decision is better. So pretty much the article found that you can use either one for your students and they're going to work. You don't have to stick with curriculum-based or nonsense word. You can do whichever your students like more and whichever helps them personally. Yes?
If you can answer, it's okay.
Okay.
Preface that. why would you think you would want to use nonsense words, even if you don't use it every week? Why do you think it would be beneficial to use nonsense word fluency prose every now and again?
Is that for any of us or just her?
No, any of y'all.
I think it would be because whenever you use a nonsense word, it kind of takes, I don't want to say the meaning away from the word, but I know as people and even as little children, they associate words with things, and so they automatically hear a word and they think that they know how it should be spelled, but if you use a nonsense word that they really don't know what it is, they're more focused on just the individual sounds to build that word.
Very good, very good. I agree. I would also say that a lot of the, oh my, that a lot of the CBC words, they may know by heart, and so this would take away any type of guessing. So I think that, but yes, very good answer. No, it wasn't just an AJ, it was for the group, so glad you answered. Okay, thank you.
So to kind of finish it up and everything, so the differences for students receiving these interventions tended to differ, as AJ said, because I mean, not always not always did every student be tested or participated in both sides and everything. And there are always something always happens, so results from it may suggest that educators may observe different rates. So as there were 3,000 students, maybe let's say within a district, well, you had so many teachers doing that, different teachers can get things done quicker, the different students may be at different levels, so many things can go into this that could, like AJ said, have that error in the slope. And so another quote that I found is the progress monitoring researchers can use the multi-level modeling to compare the reliability and validity of competing measures in an analytical, defensible way. So again, limitations. Differentiating student response strategies. I mean, there's so many ways to do nonsense words. You could just be testing the first letter sound, or you could be doing the full word. You could be doing blending or segmenting. There are so many different things that could happen within that. So it could have been different teachers or tutors doing different things for different students. So now we're going to do our activity. Aren't you excited?
Yes.
We're doing our activity.
Okay, so this is, I think is actually kind of fun. So you're going to need to have a piece of paper and something to write with, and then you're going to need to find a partner, and I think there's going to be one group of 3, which will work out. Perfect. If you're, one person will need paper. If you're in the group of 3, 2 people will need paper. Does that make sense? So one sheet of paper per couple should work, except for y'all.
Except for you.
Except y'all. Yeah, give one of those yours. Do you want to hand out to your groups?
Yeah.
Just one for Yeah.
Do they just?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just one paper per group. Yeah, that's fine. That'll work out perfect. It's not the best of it.
Yes, you don't have to write that.
Okay, so whenever you are in your group, which I think everybody is, oh Lord. Didn't realize we were still finished. But whenever you're in your group, AJ is going to be coming around and giving one person a list of the words. If you have the paper in front of you, I don't want you to look at the words. Okay? If you have the regular sheet of paper, do not leave the words. If you have the words, then you can look at the words. Okay, so what you're going to do, you're going to be timed. So this is going to be kind of a combination of an NWF and the CBM test. Because with the CBM, you are timed. With the NWF, you're kind of working through your own pace. So this is going to be kind of the best of both worlds, where you can kind of understand what's going on. As you can see, if you have the words in front of you, these are nonsense words. Okay? Meaning they are not real for the most part. Some of them are real words, but for the most part, not exactly. But, so what you're gonna be doing within this minute, one person is going to be, calling out the word. Now, I know in the presentation I said that typically you would not call out the word because you'd be giving auditory cues, but, what this is gonna be testing is can you take that sound and match it to the letter that you think it matches with? Does that make sense to everybody? So one person is going to be calling out the word, and then the other two or person in your group will be writing that down. Does that make sense? There's not a certain amount that you have to get through, but you do only have a minute, so be sure to work at a nice pace. Is everybody ready? And does everybody understand?
So we say the word, they write the.
So like bub.
Yeah, like, for example, the first one I think is bub, okay? I would say bub, they would write what
Okay.
they think would bub be. Okay? Does that make sense, everybody? And go.
Bub. Okay. Rag. Rog. Rug. Yeah. Bess. S. Boss. Bass. Bus. Miss. Yep.
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 Yep or yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, pencils down.
There.
Okay, did the element of time kind of stress you out a little bit? Thinking, oh my gosh, I have this list of words in front of me, and now I'm timed. Okay, as a student, that always bothered me. I never liked timed tests per se, just because that kind of stressed me out, and I typically did not do as well on those. So as a teacher, that's something to kind of take into consideration. As well, which method would you like to use to assess your students with this? And a lot of times schools will kind of dictate, especially if you're doing a certain program, like if you're using a certain reading program, it'll kind of dictate what you should use. But if you know that you have a student that does not do well with time tests, then this might not be your best option to really get